Winning a Grammy is often described as the ultimate achievement in the record business, a symbol that an artist has reached the very top. For Petula Clark, however, awards and applause never told the full story. While her voice comforted millions during World War II and later filled radios around the world with joy, her private life was shaped by rejection, pressure, and battles she rarely spoke about. Audiences heard brightness and optimism in her songs, but behind the scenes she lived with depression, unequal treatment, and long stretches of silence. Even in 2023, at the age of 90, she nearly lost the voice that had defined her life. The woman who brought happiness to generations spent decades fighting struggles few people ever knew existed. Petula Clark was born Sally Owen Clark on November 15, 1932, in Surrey, England. She grew up near Longgrove Hospital, where both her parents worked as nurses. Money was scarce, and the Great Depression weighed heavily on families like hers. From an early age, she helped around the house and learned patience by watching her parents devote themselves to caring for others. That sense of empathy settled into her personality and later became part of the warmth people heard in her singing. Her father had a playful imagination and created the name Petula by blending the names of two former girlfriends, saying it sounded cheerful at a time when cheer was badly needed. Her mother, Doris, was a trained soprano and quickly noticed her daughter's natural musical ability. By the time Petula was 5, she was singing folk songs at family gatherings, slowly building confidence one small performance at a time. Everything changed when she was 7. In 1939, she appeared on stage mimicking popular radio singers, and teachers immediately encouraged her to continue. As Britain moved toward war, a child with a bright, clear voice felt like hope. Soon she was performing regularly, bringing comfort to listeners at home and to troops far from their families. Despite her growing visibility, life at home remained modest and grounded. Her parents' example kept her steady, even as her voice began reaching far beyond their small neighborhood. By the age of 9, she was recording simple demos at home on her father's gramophone, imitating stars like Shirley Temple. Her parents allowed it, seeing how much joy it brought her during an increasingly tense time. On October 17, 1942, she sang on the BBC Empire service, dedicating a song to her uncle stationed overseas. Britain was exhausted by air raids and fear, and her small, calm voice struck a deep chord. Letters poured into the BBC from listeners who said she had brought them comfort. From then on, she performed weekly on radio, even singing in bomb shelters while sirens wailed overhead. By the end of the war years, she had given hundreds of concerts for troops and evacuated children, often traveling through blackout zones and performing as rockets fell nearby. Though she was barely 10 years old, she already understood how much people needed relief and hope. Her radio success led naturally to film roles. During the war, she appeared in several movies, earning praise for her honesty and natural screen presence. Even as a child, she showed discipline and professionalism that surprised adults around her. By her early teens, she had already appeared in numerous films and television programs, becoming a familiar face in British households. Yet when the war ended, the spotlight dimmed abruptly. In 1945, the BBC dismissed her as a wartime novelty, saying there was no longer a need for child performers. The rejection was devastating. At just 13, she was pushed aside after years of service and praise, triggering a depression she kept hidden for decades. She continued quietly, studying and auditioning while facing repeated rejection. Slowly, she shifted toward music. At 16, she signed her first recording contract and met producer George Martin, who helped her find confidence in the studio. Her early singles didn't make a major impact, but they laid the groundwork for what was to come. Throughout this period, she resisted pressures that many young performers faced. When an agent tried to push her into suggestive modeling work, she refused, insisting on respect even when it risked her career. Her breakthrough arrived in the mid-1950s with a series of hit songs that turned her into one of Britain's most popular young singers. Her voice, gentle yet confident, resonated with audiences at home and abroad. She soon found success across Europe, recording in French and becoming a major star in Paris. Singing fluently in multiple languages, she connected with audiences far beyond Britain and proved she could adapt and thrive anywhere. By the early 1960s, she was one of the most internationally successful female artists in the world. In 1964, everything changed again with the release of Downtown. The song topped charts in the United States and made her a central figure in the British invasion. Her appearance on American television reached tens of millions of viewers, cementing her status as a global icon. Yet even at the height of her fame, inequality followed her. She was paid less than male performers, pressured by record labels, and often dismissed when she voiced concerns. One of her most defining moments came in 1968 during a television special with Harry Belafonte. While singing together, she briefly touched his arm, an act that broke an unspoken racial barrier on American television. Sponsors panicked and demanded the scene be removed, but she refused. The broadcast aired as filmed, sparking outrage, praise, and even death threats. She toured with security afterward, fully aware of the risk, but she never apologized for choosing integrity. Her career continued to evolve through the decades. As musical trends shifted, she moved between pop, cabaret, theater, and television, reinventing herself repeatedly. She earned Grammy recognition, starred on Broadway, and returned to the West End with critical acclaim. Even in her later years, she embraced reinvention, recording new albums, performing at major festivals, and reaching younger audiences who rediscovered her work. Behind the success, her personal life carried deep complexity. Her marriage to Claude Wolfe, who managed her career, lasted decades but grew distant over time. They raised 3 children while living demanding, often separate lives. She later spoke openly about the guilt of motherhood balanced against constant touring, and the toll it took on her emotionally. The industry exposed her to harassment in situations where silence felt like the only protection. These experiences, combined with early rejection and years of pressure, contributed to long-standing depression she hid from the public. In her later years, therapy helped her confront those buried wounds. She began to speak more openly about the shadows behind her success, especially in her memoirs. When she faced serious health challenges in her 90s, including vocal cord surgery after COVID, she feared losing the very thing that had defined her. Her recovery and return to the stage symbolized the resilience that had carried her through a lifetime of reinvention. Petula Clark's legacy is not only one of chart-topping songs and historic performances, but of quiet courage. She stood up against inequality, crossed barriers when it was dangerous to do so, and continued creating long after others expected her to fade.